Well, hello, I am Erica Lukes, and this is Expanding Frontiers. You can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out the latest on all of the work we're doing with our nonprofit. And today, and we've already had this wonderful warm-up with, I had this great conversation with Trent, and then we push the go live button. It's amazing. But I am here with somebody, and you've heard me, if you follow my show, you've heard me talk about Trent Harris for a long time. He is somebody that back in 1991, I got turned on to with a cult classic film called Rubin and Ed about two unlikely friends who find a dead cat. Well, there's a dead cat in the freezer. They decide to bury the cat. The whole story is so amazing, and it was filmed in Salt Lake and in parts of Utah that are absolutely spectacular. But this film was panned by critics. It was loved by many, and it had a very impactful, it's very impactful to me to this day. I don't think I've seen a movie that makes me laugh so much, and every time you watch it, you find something different or a deeper meaning in that. So Trent has had a long, long career, 50 years in the film industry, making films, creating art, the most beautiful art, really fantastic. And I'm happy that I have one of his postcards. I'm just going to show you that. And I've got another one on the way of my favorite cat, Mufasa, who maybe will join us today. But Trent went on to produce, you've made 150 movies.
Oh, probably. I mean, if you count all of the television and documentary stuff, I've made a lot of films. I lost count after more than 100. Yeah.
And you grew up, because I love watching interviews with you. There was one interview that you did with a fellow in California, and it was a 2-hour interview. And he's a filmy. I mean, he's just purple glasses. He asked the most off the wall questions. And it was like, oh my Lord, I should learn how to ask questions like that. But you rolled with it, and I became quite enamored with him after the interview, and the two of you were just wonderful. But you talk a little bit about, in that interview and other interviews, about growing up in a small town in Idaho, 500 people. You talk about your mother and the influence of your older brother. And just, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about your mom and her influence.
Well, my mom was a newspaper reporter for really small papers in Idaho, so we'd move around a lot. My dad was gone at that time, but she was very supportive of me. Early on, she spent a lot of money to give me painting classes, money she didn't have, so I could take art classes and things like that. When I finally got going on film, she would come to everything. I actually put her in a couple of my movies. She has small parts. I think I've told you before that when I very first got started showing my films, it was the small theater called the Utah Film and Video Center. And my mother said, nobody's going to come unless I make door prizes. So she started making hot sauce that we'd give away as a door prize, and it worked. The theaters filled up, and people liked the hot sauce, I think, probably more than the movies. And also that there were several articles written in newspapers about the screenings, and they always talked about the hot sauce and not my movies.
I love that, May's Atomic Hot Sauce. That is so cool. Yeah. And that was a legendary place.
Oh, May's Atomic Taco Bomb sauce.
Not May's, Lord, I need to get it right. Yeah, I bet that was a kick. I have a mother that was very supportive, a single mom, as well, for me, and growing up supporting my music and everything that I wanted to do. And it's always nice to have that influence. And you had an older brother whom you've talked about, and tell us a little bit about him.
Oh boy, that's a pretty crazy subject. My older brother, I just loved him dearly. I kind of equate him to Elvis Presley, because he was so wonderful and creative and smart and so fucked up at the same time. He was a mess, and he was a brilliant mess is what he was. But boy, was he supportive. and always there for me in the background. His death was probably one of the most traumatic things I've ever had. I just adored my brother.
Did
Wonderful person. He was a
did he
psychologist, and what he did was he worked with people that were disabled or didn't have money or homeless folks, stuff like that. Those are the kind of, so he never made a dime in his whole life, but he had the biggest heart and so much integrity. He was just a wonderful person.
did he stay in Idaho the whole time?
He lived here in Salt Lake.
Did he?
Yeah.
And what did he think of your film career?
Oh, he just loved it. He very supportive. My family, is very small, but boy, they were just great. I mean, I went through years when I didn't have any money at all, and I was sleeping on his couch, and my mom would send me money to pay my rent in Los Angeles, and it wasn't much. I mean, my rent wasn't much, but it was, without their help, I wouldn't have been able to do anything really.
Isn't that wonderful? What were the two movies that your mom made a cameo in?
Oh, she's in Plan 10 from Outer Space, and she's in Rubin and Ed. I think she's in the audience for the Success Seminar.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to have to watch it again and again because
I know she's in Rubin and Ed. In Plan 10 from Outer Space a couple of times.
Wow. And Plan 10 from Outer Space. I'm going to go back a little bit before we get to that movie, because everybody in the UFO world, which I've got my, that's been, 10 years of my life, actually my whole life, digging into stuff like that, and making some discoveries that weren't exactly what I had expected, but, with the UFO and the UFO that destroys Salt Lake, and then the Mormon theme and some of these things in Plan 10 from Outer Space, that really has a lot of extra meaning for me. And I think people, especially here in Utah, just get a kick out of it.
Did you grow up Mormon?
Yeah, till I was about 12.
So you understand a lot of the references.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had said that was probably more historically accurate than the films that they show at the conference center.
Oh, by far.
Well, the things they don't want you to know, but so let's talk about your first, you were a cameraman at KUTV, and
I was a producer.
Producer.
Yeah.
So, and that station was locally, it was owned by a couple, right?
Well, it was owned by George Hatch, who lives here in lived here in Salt Lake City. And it was a family-run station. They used to do that back in the 70s and 80s. That all fell apart in the middle 80s, early 90s. There were no more locally owned stations, really. Well, we have KSL because of the church, but most of the stuff was bought by big conglomerates. So
when you did that, it sounded like you had a pretty good budget, and you could go around and interview some great people.
I mean, the show I worked for was called Extra, and it was probably the most progressive experimental television show in the country by far. Who would have guessed it would be out of Salt Lake City? I mean, it was an extremely talented group of people that worked on this show. It was a half-hour magazine show, but we could do, I did stories on Timothy Leary, on Allen Ginsberg, on motorcycle gangs, on the Ramones, on Patti Smith, and I, just go on and on and on, which nobody would cover now. I do, but even things like the local dog catcher and all kinds of different stories, and they were very supportive of it. And the show was quite successful for quite a while.
Can you find any of those online now?
The University of Utah just digitized the entire show. So there's going to be there's a movie being made about the show, actually. And that's going to be screened. It's going to be screened this year, I know.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, if you go to the University of Utah Special Collections and type in Extra, that's one of the things that they decided they were going to preserve for the future.
That is so fantastic. I go there quite frequently, and I've been up there, and actually in Mondo, Utah, you mentioned a book called The Utah UFO Display, and
Oh, right,
Dr.
right.
Frank Salisbury's
Yeah.
archive is up there, and so I
Oh, is
love.
it really? I
Yeah,
should
it
go
is.
look at that.
Oh my gosh, it is just it's amazing to see, the UFO reports, and then also he worked for NASA and he had all sorts of letters that would come in from people that were true believers, and one true believer that was so off the hook he had to call in the FBI. Shocking in the UFO world, but it's a very special place for a lot of reasons. There are great things at the
Oh,
University of Utah.
it's a great resource. Yeah.
It is. I'm going to be looking at that as well. And I've been thinking I wanted
In
to
fact,
do.
that archive has all of my papers and films and scripts and drawings, and they've got a huge archive of my stuff also.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
It
Okay.
hasn't all been cataloged yet, but I know up until 2007 it had been cataloged. So, anyway, there's probably 500 pieces up there of different things.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go up there. My grandfather, his best friend was Everett Cooley, and Everett Cooley was the one of the people that started the special archive at the
Oh,
University of Utah,
okay.
and he was a history professor up there. And so it's very
Right.
cool to have that. I mean, knowing him growing up, and then knowing other people that are involved up there and spending time. It's a very special place, and
Yep.
it's great to know that your stuff is there. So tell us, so you're working for the station, you're producing. When do you start really moving into doing film full time?
Well, I mean, I was doing film full time from early on, but I started, when was it? I think I was about 29 when I decided to move to Los Angeles and try to get into become a famous big director. So before that, I'd made a lot of documentaries and experimental films and things like that. But I think, what would have been 1980, I moved to Los Angeles and went to the American Film Institute. And there, boy, did I learn a lot there. That place I don't know what it's like now, but when I went there, it was like a boot camp for filmmakers. I mean, you'd get there at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 8 o'clock at night, and you still didn't were able to see everything that was going on. It was just an incredible place, you know, amazing people. You'd have David Lynch down the hall giving a lecture, and then down in another room would be Dustin Hoffman. And then the person that taught was my editing teacher, actually cut Citizen Kane.
Oh, wow.
Robert Wise. It's like
Wow.
that's the kind of thing that it was just a wonderful, wonderful, tough experience.
And so what was your thought process like back then? I mean, did you have a certain direction that you felt you wanted to go, and has that changed?
Well, I wanted to be a Hollywood director, I thought at that time. And, I hung in there long enough that I did get Rubin and Ed made. It was a studio picture, but boy, I didn't like Los Angeles. I didn't like the people I was dealing with. I really didn't like going around asking for permission to make a movie. You have to go and beg for money and all. It was just at a certain point after I did Rubin and Ed, and the reviews came out and they were terrible. And I'd had another film called Zizix that was greenlit, and they pulled that. And I just decided if I'm going to make movies, I got to get out of here. So I got in my car and left Los Angeles, and it was at the time I was kind of sad. And I mean, I'd been there like 13 years, and I was thinking, is this really the right thing to do? And it turns out it was one of the best things I ever did in my life was get the hell out of there.
It sounds like, from the people I know that have spent time there as well and trying to do the same thing, it sounds very toxic, and that is
It is
hard when you're
toxic.
really creative and you don't want to be beholden to somebody else, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and I mean, every cliche you've ever heard about Hollywood is true. The cigar chomping, dishonest producers, the bimbo, big breasted bimbo, the casting couches, all of that junk is true. It's all true, and it's not the incredible egos. I mean, what I found was that a lot of the people, they weren't really interested in film. They were interested in fame, in money, and power, and not necessarily film. Now, that isn't to say everyone, because the neat thing about Los Angeles while I was there is I met a lot of people who were striving for excellence, were just going to take it as far as they could. That I can't find so much in Salt Lake, which I miss. But, you know, I became pretty good pals with people like Sean Penn and stuff. These, you know, they were going for excellence in what they did, and that was exciting. That part I liked.
And
I wish
so,
we had more of that here.
so what do you think? What do you think of the film industry here in Utah?
I don't know anything about it. Quite frankly, I don't.
Okay.
I mean, there's the stuff that comes in from the outside, and then there's a lot of movies being made down in Orem, Provo area. Some of them are church type movies. An inordinate amount of bad horror films.
Oh,
which I don't understand why people keep doing bad horror films. Or even, it's like, but you know, I haven't seen. Well, there's always Jared Hess. You know, he wonderful filmmaker there that came out of that area. But I don't know. There's not a lot going on that I can tell. But again, I'm out of it. I stay in my office and work on my own stuff, and I really don't know what the hell's going on out there. But I don't care.
And I mean, that's kind of nice. You've got your friends that you drink beer with. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure you hang out with Ken Sanders, who I definitely want to talk a little bit about, and your friendship with him, because he's such a unique man, and everybody in Utah knows him. But it's, you know, it's okay. And I want to go back to, because you have such a large career, but when can we talk a little bit about the Beaver trilogy, Dave, if you are okay with that?
Oh, I'm so sick of talking about.
I know you are, but
of course we can. I mean,
it's okay.
It's a film. I'm actually going to New York next month for a screening of Beaver Trilogy. That movie just keeps going and going and going and going and going. I mean, I've had, you know, when did I finish that thing? It was like 1985 or something. And it has been since it actually came out in 2000. Well, it didn't really come out, but it reared its head in 2000. It's been almost continually showing all over the world. I did a screening in Berlin a couple of years back, just before COVID, and there were actually people there dressed up like the Beaver Kid and singing Olivia Newton-John songs. And I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I know. In Berlin, I was like, huh? The Beaver Kid's become what he is. He's an icon in a certain way. You know, it's the movie, for people that don't know about it. It's about a young man from Beaver, Utah, who likes to dress up like Olivia Newton-John. And I filmed a documentary about him that was just wild. And then he ended up shooting himself. And then I ended up redoing the film twice more. Once with Sean Penn playing the kid, and once with Crispin Glover playing the kid. And then I hooked all three together. And it's about 90 minutes when you hook all three together. And when I hooked all three together, it became a completely different animal. A really kind of, you know, well, it's what it is. It's, you know, it's played at the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, Sundance, all over the world, really. It's very strange. And usually it's not that I don't want to talk about it. It's just that I'm so tired of talking about it, because I've been interviewed probably 1,000 times about it. And it's like, oh no, there's nothing I can say that's new to that. And
Right,
if people want to know about it, there's plenty out there.
Exactly. Okay, and thank you for just briefly touching on that.
Sure. In fact, there was a whole movie made about me making the movie called Beaver Trilogy Part 4, which premiered at Sundance a couple of years ago. And you can find that's streaming on various streaming services. That explains a lot about it also.
You know, it does. And he actually, I mean, you finally see him again at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah, it's like 20 years later or something. We hook up again. When he shot himself, he didn't die. It was just, you know, it was a serious injury, but he didn't die. And then I didn't show the film for, you know, I finished it in 85, and I didn't show it until 2000, because I was worried about him, really, how it would affect him. But due to all kinds of weird circumstances, it ended up getting out there. And then, you know, I invited him to the big screening at Sundance, and he came. It was quite a scene when he was there. People loved him.
I bet. And it looked like he was just so happy
Yeah.
to have that
Well, he
kind
was
of.
everything. He was confused. He was happy. He was bewildered. He was horrified. He was excited because I think the film shows a part of him which he didn't feel comfortable with.
Right. And thank you again for talking about that one. I know you've done lots of interviews about that. But again, just that really is a wonderful piece of work. So let's talk about your interview with Timothy Leary for a minute, because I watched that again, and I'm like, oh my Lord. I mean, that was very interesting. How did that come about, and
Well,
what were your thoughts?
Timothy Leary had always been kind of a hero of mine. You know, he was very into UFO stuff. Well, not
I
UFO
know.
stuff, but going to outer space. He was very interested in expanding into other planets and things like that. And I'd always kind of looked up to him because of I just saw him as another heroic misfit, a rebel, a brilliant man. You know, all of his trouble that he got into by, his philosophies about LSD. He became famous mostly for being, quote, the LSD guru. But he was also a Harvard professor. I mean, the guy was bright. And I just called him up one day and said I wanted to do an interview. And they said, okay. And I went with my friend Larry Roberts to do the interview. And Larry was going to do the interview and he got scared. He was intimidated by so we're driving around the block outside of Liberty, or outside of his house. And I said, let's do it this way. Just bring up one word and then let Leary comment on it. So you don't have to do a big interview. You just say cult. And then Leary just goes off on what a cult is. And then you say television, and he goes off on that. And it worked out quite well.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I definitely learned things about him that I didn't know in that.
Yeah, he's great fun. You can find that on my website, I think. Yeah.
And also Allen Ginsberg.
Yeah. Again, one of my kind of heroes. This was the good thing about it, I could go and meet my heroes because I just call them up and say, I work for this TV station and I want to do a story on you. And they were always like flabbergasted. Where are you? Salt Lake? Timothy Leary, Allen Ginsberg? Really? And yeah. And then they do it. I actually became, I really liked Allen Ginsberg, and we continued our relationship a bit after the movie. He was going to do a fundraiser for Beaver Trilogy, actually.
Wow.
He was going to come to Salt Lake to do a fundraiser, and he was going to bring along William Burroughs. And we were going to have it at what was a gay bar at the time called The Sun.
Yes.
Trying to get it going there. And the guy that was running The Sun said, nobody's going to be interested in those two. And I was like, what are you talking about? So he didn't do it. He didn't schedule it.
That's unfortunate.
Very strange, isn't it? I mean, William Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg, come on.
And so when Allen, like, you took him on a little trip out to the desert, right?
No. I did that in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that when I saw that, it looked a little bit like.
Well, there's a part where we're driving through a very barren kind of landscape, and he's making up a poem as we drive along. He's a remarkable person, again, up to his ears in trouble all the time, in and out of courts. And, and it was always because he was speaking his mind. His very famous poem, Howl, it's a wonderful piece. And, the powers of be at that time declared it pornographic, and tried to yank the books off the shelves, all of that bullshit. And, he fought through it. And
I wonder what would happen, today. Probably the same thing, unfortunately.
Well, it is happening.
Right.
We've got a bunch of knuckleheads, and a lot of them from Utah Valley that think that they know what books should and shouldn't be read. I mean, I hate those kind of people.
I know.
I was just reading today about all of the poets and writers that have been locked up around the world right now. There are more, I think there are 355 or something like that. There were 3 locked up in Moscow when was it, about a week or 2 ago. 3 poets. They throw them in jail. and lock them up. Which on one level, I mean, really, I find terrible. But on the other level, there's something about it that I liked, and it was that art can be that powerful that it's threatening to people. So there is a power to it that is like I say, is a threat to evil sons of bitches.
Right. Absolutely. And there was a quote, I'm trying to remember word for word, that you say that if art doesn't cause a riot.
Yeah.
We, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. If art doesn't cause a riot, what good is it? I can't remember my exact
Yeah,
quote.
along those lines, but I love that.
Yeah, well, it comes from something from Plato, actually. Plato said, well, this is what Plato said something, and then Frank Zappa paraphrased it. So I'll do the Frank Zappa version. He said, when the mode of the music changes, the walls of the city shake. I thought about that for a long time. What's he talking about? What's he talking about? He's talking about the mode of the music is really the cultural changes that are going on. And when those cultural changes happen, then the establishment follows. I mean, if you look at things like gay rights, didn't come out of politics. It came out of people like Madonna. You know, it was cultural icons that forced it through. It wasn't any politician. They were dragged along later. So that notion that art can be very powerful in shaping a society, I find encouraging. You know, I wish, you know, I have friends that make movies in Cuba, and they put it on the line. You know, they're threatened and they're in trouble, and I had one of my really good friends was Yevgeny Yufit, a Russian filmmaker who suddenly ended up dead in St. Petersburg. You know, there were three artists and 3 journalists that suddenly ended up dead. You know, I was like, really?
How long ago?
That would have been, this has been 7, 8 years ago.
Wow.
Something like that. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I mean,
you know, and it's so sad. I have, you know, a couple friends that are journalists, and they, you know, are going all over the world and putting themselves, you know, obviously in the midst of, or even in our own country, you know, putting themselves in the midst of really dangerous situations to tell the truth and to, you know, just to see what they have been through, and then to see how people are mocking, you know, the media or people that are
that's so infuriating. You know, this stuff about the fake news.
Right.
There is fake news out there, but it's not the mainstream media. The mainstream media is not fake news. It's
an interesting time we're living in. I don't know quite what to think. And if we make it through the next 6 months, I'll be very happy about that. And it's going to be crazy. But there's so many things I wanted to ask you, but I wanted to go back to Rubin and Ed really quickly, because of course I geek out on this. Tell me what it was like and how you met Howard Hesseman.
Oh, well, originally Peter Boyle was cast in the part of Ed. And then we started shooting, and about, what was it, maybe a week into shooting, Peter had a stroke and ended up in the hospital. And it was obvious that he couldn't continue on with the movie. And Peter, Peter is the one that recommended Howard. So Howard came in, and Howard just got it like that. I mean, Howard is such a pro. I didn't ever have to tell Howard anything. There was one instruction I gave Howard in the very last scene we shot, kind of at the end of the movie. I said, this needs to be faster. Other than that, never. I mean, he just knew everything. Great guy.
And I love it when they're sitting there, like you're saying, and they're doing the self-help and that kind of stuff that was really popular at that time, and now is kind of making a comeback. But just to see his toupee, and I mean Crispin Glover's pants and shoes, and talk about the cat in the freezer, because that is based on a real experience.
Look, it's right there.
Oh, okay. I need one of those. Those are cute. I like that.
I'd gone over to a friend's house. His name's Merrill Melfith. He's a bricklayer, a big guy, smokes Marlboro cigarettes. And I went over to his house, and we were sitting out on the porch drinking a couple of beers. And I went in to get another beer. opened up the freezer and there was a cat in it. So I went out and I said, God, Merrill, what's going on? And he says, well, Simon died and I didn't want to put him in the trash. And so I didn't know what to do. So I put him in the freezer and I'll bury him. So that kind of thing sticks in your mind. And that became one of the inspirations for the movie.
That would stick in your mind.
Yeah.
Yes, that absolutely would stick in your mind. And so you were friends with Crispin. Obviously, you worked with him in 2 films. And he's a very interesting actor, very interesting person. Is he that quirky in real life?
Oh, I don't know. I don't ever use words like quirky and stuff because I don't even know what they mean anymore. I mean, I look at somebody like our Senator Mike Lee, and I think, God, that guy is weird.
Okay, good point.
You know, it's like, it depends on your frame of reference.
That's true. Quirky and creepy, all in one.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the picture of him with Trump standing behind him, with his hands on Mike Lee's shoulders, and it's just like, okay, I'm out. Peace out on this one. It's very special. So you left Hollywood after Rubin and Ed, and then you came back to. Did you come to Salt Lake?
Yeah, I came back to Salt Lake. Been here pretty much ever since I've lived here. I took up another job where I'd traveled around a lot in Southeast Asia and a lot in Africa doing documentaries. But most of the time I was in Salt Lake, and I made. As soon as I got back here, I started another film, which is the Plan 10 from Outer Space film, which was fast. I wrote that, produced it, shot it, edited it, and premiered it in Sundance in less than 18 months, which is real fast for a film. Considering that it had taken me 13 years to get Rubin and Ed off the ground.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's not quite true, but years anyway.
And I mean, that Plan 10 from Outer Space has been called Nancy Drew on Acid, Sundance Film Festival. And then Rocky Horror Meets the Mormons.
Right.
Was another quote about that. And it is really spectacular. And so the music, like, did you I know you write a lot of your own music.
No, I didn't do the music. It's Fred Myro. He's the same guy that did the music for Rubin and Ed.
Okay.
And I met him. He's just a great guy. He could do anything. Any kind of music. And I actually met him because originally on Rubin and Ed, Mark Mothersbaugh was he's the guy in Devo. And he was going to do the music, but then he couldn't do it. And he said, you should talk to Fred. And I was like, Fred, oh boy, I'm glad I got Fred. He turned out to be great.
How fun. But you do write music though.
Well, I've created I don't really know how to write music, but I've created soundtracks for several of my films, and I do it using loops and drum machines and stuff like that. I can't play any. Well, I used to play the accordion, but that was it.
Oh, that comes in handy.
Yeah, really. But yeah, I could create. I created a couple of good soundtracks for movies, for a couple of my movies. What was it? Delightful Water was one, and Luna Mesa, I did the sound.
Oh, I love that soundtrack.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful movie. That's really, really fantastic. And you filmed that in where? Were you outside of Hanksville?
Luna Mesa? Well, I was in Cambodia, Burma, Thailand, Mexico. Where else did I shoot? And then, Southern Utah. So it's in all of those places.
Wow.
Yeah. And a lot of it in Cambodia.
How long were you in Cambodia?
I was there. Well, I've gone back so many times. I've been there probably a good chunk of 5 years. I mean, when I was working there, I probably went back and forth at least 20 times. I quite love that country, and I haven't been back in a little while, but yeah, remarkable place.
And when you were traveling, you saw some things that were pretty horrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in your journals, you can go through your journal, and they're absolutely stunning to see, what you have in there and how you process that. And
where did you see? Oh, you saw the video of it, or where did you see the journal?
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was, yeah. made a couple of videos of those, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the midst of the well, sometimes in Burma I was, but I did stories on genocide for basic, I was in Rwanda, Sierra Leone was the hard one, Burma, a lot of stuff in Cambodia, South Africa a long time ago when apartheid was going on. So I have seen how mean people can be. Oh my God, they can be mean. It's, yeah.
How did you deal with that? Because it's
I went
trauma.
insane.
You what? I'm sorry.
I went insane. I lost my mind for a period of time. Yeah. But
How do you think people like that are constantly in a situation where they're experiencing trauma on a daily basis deal with that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, the people you're talking about were in a lot more dangerous situations than I ever was. I mean, there was, I think there was a little bit in Burma that was dicey, and then Sierra Leone is a pretty dicey place. But other than that, I never felt really threatened, or nobody was shooting at me for the most part.
That's comforting.
Only in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's probably more likely. But I mean, there was you walked through a minefield.
Yeah, that wasn't one of the smarter things I've done, but
Well, and it looks like I think your girlfriend at the time, you
yeah,
had a picture or a scene of
yeah,
her, and she's saying, "No, please don't go, please don't go." And then the next scene, you're out there following the
yeah,
guides out into the minefield.
yeah. That was a couple. I did that 3 or 4 times. It was fascinating to watch that. That first place, that was actually Pol Pot's house up there. Pol Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge, the genocide in Cambodia. That was, I mean, he was dead, obviously, for quite a while, but that was his house. My house was surrounded by mines and things. Yeah.
So was it just too much for you to deal with? And when did you decide to separate from doing that
Well,
intense?
no, I would have kept doing it, but what happened was the show finally went off the air. It was for WNET in New York, and the guy that was running the show, that was the heart of the show, died. And when he died, they had never groomed anyone to take over the show, and the show kind of died. It had been on the air, like, I didn't work the whole time, but I think it had been on the air 27 years. It was quite a kind of a magazine format, like 60 minutes, only not really. And so I'd do these short documentaries in different places. Fascinating. Boy, talk about learning something every other day. You go into Cambodia, I don't know a damn thing. And then about the 20th time I went there, I knew quite a bit about that place and what had happened. And I had friends there, and I'd been all over the country. And so that happened in several different locations. It's in Tanzania 3 or 4 times. And anyway, yeah. I mean, the people that really do that all the time, sometimes they'd call you, I was called this, and they were right about it. They call them parachute journalists. So the story's kind of already happening, and you come in and you do something for 2 or 3 days, and then you leave. Where the people you're talking about are there on the ground for, months at least, sometimes longer.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. I have one specific friend that trains different journalists and stuff to deal with wartime situations, and I
Yeah.
don't know how, just again, it takes such a brave human
You
being
know,
to do that.
one thing that was funny I noticed is when I was walking through those minefields, I was looking through my camera like this, and it wasn't threatening at the time, because for some reason I was looking through the camera and it didn't seem like television. But then when I came back and hooked it into my computer and looked at the footage, I went, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" This was the
Was your girlfriend
stupidest.
really mad at you then? When she saw the footage? That is it. And so what was like a special experience that you had? What was one of those meaningful experiences you had while you were traveling?
Oh, there's been so many of them. One of them was in Cambodia, and I was out at the garbage dump, in Phnom Penh, which is, my God, it's a horrible place. And there are all these little kids out there scavenging. And I saw this little girl. I was with a guy named Scott Neeson. He'd taken me out there. I was doing a story about him. Amazing guy. He was a vice president, I think, at Sony. Big shot in Hollywood. He'd gone to Cambodia and seen this situation on the garbage dump and decided he was going to change it. So he went back to Hollywood, quit his job, sold a mansion, sold the Bentley, sold the yacht, went back to Cambodia and opened up this little school. And every day he'd go out to the dump, which is, my God, that place is horrible. And he'd find these little kids and he'd get them back and he'd get them into his school. And he eventually built a hospital for them. He takes some of these kids all of the way through the university. You know, he pays for everything. Anyway, I ended up meeting a little girl out there and sort of adopted her. Well, sponsored her would be a better word. Vanna Tate. And she's the cutest little thing about, you know, nobody knows how old anybody is. She's probably 5 or 6. And got her into this school and got her housing and all of that sort of stuff. That was just through Scott Neeson. That was a remarkable thing I'll never forget.
Do you still keep in touch with her?
She disappeared about 4 years ago from the school. So no, I don't know. Nobody knows quite what happened. I mean, at that time, recently the school has gone up to over 1,000 people. He's got that many students. And anyway, she would have been, let's see, when I found her, let's say she's 7, she'd have probably been 17 or 18 when she kind of vanished. And there's probably 2 things. She either ended up in a garment factory or what I hope not is a karaoke bar, which is basically kind of prostitution. It's a tough place.
Wow. That's wonderful you had that experience, though, that you could help someone. It's so interesting when you get out and travel. You know, I think a lot of times, and you're so stuck in a bubble that you don't have any concept of what it means to really truly be a human being and understand that there are people that are in situations that you can't even fathom. And I think maybe if people, you know, here in the United States or here in Utah could maybe get out and live a little bit and see some of the things that are going on, they wouldn't be burning books and or doing, you know, all of the idiot things that they're constantly doing. But
I'm really, you know, this anger at immigrants and just drives me crazy because, you know, some of the best people I've ever met in my life are from these quote shithole countries. That's what Trump calls those countries, and they're just, you know, he doesn't know what's going on. You know, you go to these places and you meet these people in these horrible situations who are so kind and generous still, you know.
Yep. I think I've always, you know, I grew up in a family who was pretty politically and community oriented. And so I don't love, but I'm very in tune to some of the messaging from political people that are running for office here. And it's all, everybody's talking about, we need to shut down the border. And it's like, well, okay, first of all, what about what's happening in Utah? Can we focus on Utah and domestic violence or some of the other issues that are going on, the housing crisis, and, you know, people can't afford to live here. It's amazing to me to see. I don't know. Sometimes it's like I'll be in the closet if you need me, or I'm going to be with my friend having a bottle of wine, and you know. But I don't know. It's important. People need to understand and have experiences like you know, you've been. That's really amazing. I want to talk to. This is again. I hopefully you'll come back on my show because I'm going to go up and look at your things at the University of Utah, and I know I'm going to have a lot of
notebooks. If you can find the notebooks, there should be 10 of them up there.
Okay.
10 journals. Those are interesting.
Well, they look like it they're stunning actually, and I need to start doing that. But I want to talk about Delightful Water Universe. Because I am very intrigued about this. So how did you get the idea for that? And tell us
God, I don't know how I got that idea. That movie, when I showed that movie, everybody just hated it. And they said, what are you doing? That movie makes no sense at all. And it's like, I said, well, yeah, but what's your point? Of course it doesn't make any sense. It's sort of about
There's Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's got a Bigfoot who controls the minds of the president with a spaghetti strainer with windshield wipers on the top.
I need one of those. Do you still have
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no.
Oh, dang it.
But
That would be very cool. And you
yeah,
don't have the shoe from Rubin and Ed, do you, anymore?
I sold it. I sold it to make another movie.
Oh,
I'd
you
get
gotta
rid of it.
gotta do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So explain
Oh,
some of the characters. Oh,
hang on a
yep,
second.
absolutely. This is real life.
Hello?
Okay. So anyway, guys, I want to just, while he is off taking a phone call, I want to just say that I'm really happy that you guys are actually watching, because I know this is during the middle of the day. And Bill, it's nice to see you here, and Peter and Pierogi Guy, all of you guys. I know that Jack will be listening, and there are other people watching on Twitter. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, to interview someone like Trent is a real honor for me, having followed his work for a couple decades, 3 decades now, and knowing that he is out there pushing boundaries and doesn't care about, as he mentioned, doing things that are meeting the status quo. It's very interesting fellow. And I want to also talk about, we're going to get into, after we talk about his film, about Bigfoot, about all of this. We're going to talk about Mondo, Utah, which is actually a book that all of you should get, and you can go to his website to buy that. I mentioned also at the beginning of the show that was in your back, so sorry. That book is about all things that are strange in Utah, and we could write many, many books on that. But while I have you for a little bit longer, can you go into the movie a little bit more? So you've got the Bigfoot angle, you've got the
Boy, can you hear that?
yeah.
Incoming. That's what I think of. Incoming. Yeah, helicopters buzzing over.
Oh, fun.
Gosh, I don't know what to say about that movie. I did the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack. I did the soundtrack on it. A lot of these things, a lot of the ideas come from stuff I read in the newspaper, or, I take a lot of ideas from the news in all of my movies and put them in, or not just the news, but stuff around me. And I'd done some, well, I think it might even be in Mondo, Utah, some stuff about Bigfoot. And I used some of that stuff in there. It's been a while. I'd have to refresh on that one. That's been like, gosh, when did I make that thing? 2007. So
Wow.
It's been a while, yeah.
What is your
The last one I made is Echo People. Have you seen that one yet?
Yes,
That's
I love it.
And that's kind of a spin-off of Rubin and Ed. I went back and revisited some of the themes, and it's almost exactly the same locations in the desert.
It's so beautiful there.
And I used the actors from Plan 10 from Outer Space in Echo People. Stephanie's been in several of my movies, and so has Pat, the actors I used.
And Stephanie's charming. I mean, she's a great actress.
She's just one of the most, I'm so lucky to know her. She is just so talented on so many levels, and just the sweetest, nicest person ever.
That is so, it's wonderful that you have, I mean, you pick people that aren't actors. Like, you kind of moved away from that because you were tired of that.
I hate them. I hate actors. No, what I do is try to build a family, kind of a family situation. So, it's the same people coming back and working on my movies, not only as the actors, but also a lot of times the crew people are the same. The person that shot Rubin and Ed, I knew from Channel 2 in the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
So, I build, you get this family around of your warriors, I call them, and okay, we're going to make a movie. Oh, we don't have any money. Nobody cares. Let's go.
And I mean, because you want to have people around you that you trust and that understand and respect your thought process and things. And you have to, I think it's just important. I think that's great that you've got specific people that you work with and support, and that support you as well.
Yeah, I mean, in Rubin and Ed, Karen Black called. I mean, not Rubin and Ed. Plan 10 from Outer Space. I got a call from Karen Black, the great actress, Five Easy Pieces, Easy Rider, all that stuff. She says, because I'd known her before she was in Rubin, and she says, Trent, I heard you're making a movie. And I said, yeah, Karen, but I don't have any money at all for this. And she said, I don't care. I'm coming up there on Friday. Make sure there's a part for me.
Wow.
Yeah, she's just great. I miss her.
How long ago did she pass away?
Oh gosh, what's it been? 7, 8 years ago, something like that.
I love when when the spaceship is there and everything's getting ready to be wiped off the planet, and just I love, that last moment with her is so
Yeah.
iconic. And I definitely recommend that everybody go to your website to buy all of your movies and all of your artwork and everything that they can, because I am totally you really like I said, Rubin and Ed was very meaningful to me, and I will always love it. And I want to ask you about Welcome to the Rubber Room before we talk a little bit about Mondo, Utah. And then I will let you go enjoy beers with your friends.
Okay. What are we talking about?
Welcome to the Rubber Room.
Welcome to the Rubber Room. Yeah, that's a movie I made about, again, something that was happening that was really disturbing me is gentrification, tearing down these wonderful old things and putting up crap, and how it destroys the soul of the city. But also, you have places where basically the Rubber Room is a bar where misfits hang out. It's where bad poets and painters and writers and people that don't have jobs and all of this sort of hang out, and they've got a stage where they do poetry and stuff like that. It's a real goofy group of people, and the Rubber Room is going to be torn down and replaced with a pottery barn. And it's like, that's basically what the show is about, and what good is art if it doesn't start a riot? So it's got something to do with these guys coming together to try to overcome the forces of not only gentrification but normalization, where everything's normal, and then in a normal world where Bed Bath and Beyond and the Pottery Barn and all of this stuff is the norm now, and there's no subculture going on because it's being rooted out.
Right.
But still subcultures do go on. I mean, they do go on. There is actually a relatively strong subculture in Salt Lake City. You got Alex Caldiero, David Brothers. There's people out there that are doing really remarkable work, doing things below the radar.
Right. And I mean, because I'm looking at Salt Lake now, and I've lived here my whole life. I mean, I grew up 2 blocks away from my studio, but I'm looking at the way, as you mentioned, all these buildings, beautiful buildings, historic buildings are just being, leveled, and this crap is going up. That is, it looks like West
Future
Jordan,
slums.
or I mean, it's really, and a lot of these things are. I mean, they're going to sit empty for a long time, but a handful of developers are making money, and that's great. But we've lost so much, in my opinion, of what used to make Salt Lake really, really special, like the Cosmic Airplane, for example.
No, I agree.
Remember,
it's a constant. Things come and go. Kilby Court's still around, but yeah, I don't know. Gentrification is not my friend.
No. Do you remember the Dead Goat?
Oh, sure. Dan Darger ran the place.
Yeah, back and then I had a friend that owned that before Dan, Mike Ricks.
Yeah.
And he that
was what was upstairs? Remember what was upstairs?
Yeah.
The Salt Lake Acting Company.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't called that then. I can't remember the name of it, but there were plays going on upstairs.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
That was the first place.
Human Ensemble, that's what it was called.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. I played there. That was my first gig when I was 18, was on the stage of the Dead Goat. And then I played there for until it was torn down, which was really a sad thing. But again, that was one of those buildings, the places like you'd go in there. I remember taking my grandmother in there, and I thought she was gonna, my cute little Mormon grandmother, I thought she was gonna have 10 heart attacks, and oh my God, we're gonna die in here. There's no fire escape and things. And she loved me so much that she hung out and watched me play in a smoky bar with questionable people, kind of, it was just so much fun. And there's so many memories. And Cosmic Airplane, Cosmic Airplane was this really funky bookstore and head shop. And it was where all of the
Records.
musicians, the rebels, kind of worked back in the day. And
well, Ken
my
Sanders.
grandmother.
Ken Sanders was one of the owners.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah, there were three owners at the time, and Ken was one of them.
Wow. I love that place. I remember in 7th grade, my grandmother drove me there in her little Cadillac with her bumper sticker on the back, and she bought Purple Rain for me. And then we brought it out to the car, and she looked at the lyrics, and then I had to do the walk of shame and take the record back because it was just so nasty. But that's okay. But just such fun places. And so you did. I'm so sorry because, like I said, I just need to have you back. But you did a short video where you were out in the desert and you had broken up with a girlfriend.
Right.
And do you remember
there's
that?
probably more than one of those.
And you were. You were so like raw. You were just living it.
Wild Goose Chronicles #1, I think. Is that it?
Yep, that was
2 or something.
You were having.
I end up in Timbuktu.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I end up going to Timbuktu, and yeah.
You definitely have been. You aren't afraid to show yourself.
I actually wrote a book about that too, about my trip to Timbuktu, called The Wild Goose Chronicles.
I'll have to get that too. You have a big fan here. And so let's talk a little bit about Mondo, Utah. When did you write Mondo, Utah?
Right after Plan 10 from Outer Space. So what would it have been? Late 90s.
And so you've always, it sounds like you've had a fascination with strange things.
Well, I don't call it what I call it is a benevolent respect for the bizarre.
So
you just showed the cover. That person on the cover was actually my great-great-grandfather.
Oh, wow.
He was a wild polygamist. His name was Yehu Virgin.
Lord have mercy on my soul. Yehu
Virgin.
Oh, my Lord. You can't make that up, can you?
No.
I have got a few pictures of my great-grandparents, and they're, polygamous on all sides. Yeah. My great-grandfather was, one of Brigham Young's besties, and just all sorts of crazy stories. So that's fascinating to know. And you've got things in here that I'm like Marie Ogden.
You're right.
Talking about that cult. I had no idea.
Truth. Yeah, the home of truth. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there.
I love it. And also I want to just show you really quickly, because I think hopefully you will appreciate this, but you talked about the Utah UFO display and Dr. Frank Salisbury, which people that listen to my show know. I actually talked with Dr. Salisbury when he was alive, and then I met Junior Hicks, who the basis of the Utah UFO display was. And so there's Junior when I went to visit him holding one of his models that you mentioned.
Well, that's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a great shot.
Yeah, I was really happy to go up there and meet with him. I did that a couple times, and he was just so proud to show these things. There's another photo.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, it was just amazing to meet him and have that experience. And I was just really excited when you wrote about that in your book. And then also Gilgal Gardens.
Sure.
And so again, this place is one of, and you just can't get over that one.
Joseph Smith Sphinx.
Yes, yeah. That's one of the favorite places that I take all my friends that come to Utah. And the bishop that built that property was my grandmother's bishop.
Oh.
It was and some of I want to just show this too. Absolutely beautiful and maybe a little bit disturbing all in one. And then also that? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like some people call them outsider artists, but they're people that are not necessarily trained in art, but they do what they do because God tells them to do it. So they create these. It's not just Gilgal Gardens. These things happen all around the world where God tells these people to create, and they do, and it's some of the most amazing things ever. It's not trying to be a famous artist. It's not trying to get into a gallery or a museum or anything. It's an inspiration that propels them, that comes from another place. I mean, I've done quite a few different things on outsider artists. There's another one on my website you guys should take a peek at on my Coconut TV called Chief Rolling Thunder. He was an Indian out in Nevada that built this amazing house because God told him to.
And that was you out there. You
Yeah.
did the film, and that was
Early 70s. Yeah.
that was stellar.
It
I
was
mean,
like
there's just Hanksville, right in Hanksville too. There's the
oh yeah.
really interesting stuff. Utah's just full of, well, I mean, there are places like this all over, but yeah, I love it. What are you up to now? Are you doing your art? Do you do like a painting every day?
Oh, not every day, but I do a lot. I do a lot, and I don't know what I do half the time. It's hard to figure out. I enjoy the library. I really enjoy the downtown library. I'm there a lot, looking at books and finding movies and doing drawings and things. I prefer it to being at home actually during the daytime. So
It's a beautiful
yeah,
building.
and I've done 3 or 4 short experimental films in the last year or so. They're kind of fun. I'm really not interested right now in trying to do another feature film. It's just not. I don't know. I just feel like been there, done that. Didn't work. Let's do something else.
What are you thinking? What do you want to do? Just go enjoy life and hang out with
Yeah.
friends?
I want to go back to Mexico City. I love Mexico City. So I go back there and hang out with friends, go to art museums. That's my favorite thing to do, is go to art museums. I'm be 5 days in New York here soon, and it's every one of those days is going to be in a museum.
So what's your favorite museum in Utah?
Oh, in Utah?
I mean, compared to New York, I know, but
Well, there's only a couple. There really aren't any. The Utah Museum of Fine Arts has a good display on right now of paintings from Japanese internment camps during World War II. People that were interned there it's the artwork they did. And that's a good show. It's a really good show.
Yeah. So New York, what's your favorite museum if you had to pick?
There's one called the New Museum that I like, and of course, the Museum of Modern Art is good. And there's one in Los Angeles that's incredible. It's called the Museum of Jurassic Technology.
Oh wow!
And what it is a completely made up museum. So everything in it is fake, but it's presented as if you're in a real museum. So it's just phenomenal to go through. It's like the wildest art experiment I've ever seen. It's been going on since the 80s at least.
I'll have to
Museum of Jurassic Technology. It was started by a bunch of crazy people from Cal Arts.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah. I think the Residents, I don't know if you know the band The Residents.
Yeah.
I think they might have been involved in it too, but I don't know for sure.
Huh.
Yeah, it's great. It's worth a trip just to do that.
Well, I've got a friend in LA, so maybe I need to hit him up and go down there and see what life is like. I haven't traveled much since COVID, except for around Utah, but
yeah,
I need to get out and live a little. Have you been to London?
Yeah, quite a few times.
What museums do you like there?
Tate Modern is the best museum there. It's fantastic.
I love London. Actually, that's one of my favorite places. And so, so you hang out with Ken Sanders, and I know that you have a lot of. I don't know. I see pictures.
I went to high school with Ken Sanders.
Oh my Lord! I bet he is so interesting. In fact, I need to have him. I have, oh my gosh, probably over 2,000 UFO books and books
Oh,
on the paranormal, and some are, first, I mean, they're 50, 60 years old. It's really cool. I'm sure he would, maybe I'll have to see if he can come up and do an appraisal and check it
yeah.
out sometime.
Yeah, I know he ended up. I don't know if you knew James Ward, not James Wardle, Wardle, the barber that was on Main Street that had the
Yeah.
massive collection. That ended up going through Ken's place.
Wow.
A lot of that ended up at Yale and Harvard and different institutions.
Wow. I
Yeah,
mean, Ken is just he's so fascinating. I need to interview him, and maybe sometime when you guys are down there together, I can talk with both of you. But it's so fun to meet people like you and know that there are really cool people in Salt Lake, because sometimes I just think, ugh, I need to, I don't know what I need to do. Go to therapy and get out more and meet fun people and things. But I'm really grateful to you for spending time with me.
oh, it's
And
been a lot of fun. It's been a
yeah,
lot of
thank
fun.
you.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, again, like I'll go up to the University of Utah and geek out on your stuff, and then hopefully I can have you back,
Yeah,
and maybe someday just invite myself to have a beer with you boys. That sounds like fun.
sure, you
I
bet.
I appreciate it very, very much, and I want to just say, this has been. I'm sorry to geek out, but I kind of in awe of Trent, and so it's really, I get a little tongue tied because this is a really awesome moment for me in my career of 10 years of interviewing people. This is probably one of the most meaningful interviews that I've done.
Oh,
Not to say
what
for
a
the
sweet
other.
thing to say.
No, it's really true. You've had a big impact on me, and so thank you for all that you've done in that regards, and thank you for being on the show. And I
You
want to
bet.
just tell people, definitely go to echocave.net, check out all of his films, his art, and I will be excited to show my painting of Mufasa that is coming soon. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great day, and I really appreciate you.
All right.
Take
Thanks a
care.
lot.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
later.
Thanks. All right, you guys, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for hanging with me during the day, and I appreciate it. I will be posting and doing my shows for Expanding Frontiers Research now, moving over to the Expanding Frontiers page, a YouTube page. So make sure you go there, click like, subscribe it, and then subscribe to it. You can also donate and become a Patreon member. Jack and I have been busy, of course, doing more FOIA requests, and we are getting more information in, and we give our Patreon users kind of a sneak peek into all of that. So it is very cool. We appreciate the support that we have. And I want to say thank you all so much. Amy, it's nice to see you. Thanks, Bill. And yep, all you guys, take care, and we will catch you guys. I'm not sure if I'm doing a show tomorrow, but you guys are good at rolling with me, so I appreciate it. You guys take care. See ya.